Japhter Kiplimo Rugut is our new guest, and we want to also welcome our guests who are watching us on KTN Home now. Japhter Rugut was famously known as the provincial commissioner, and he served for many years in the provincial administration. Thereafter, went to sports management. Then he was in the anti-doping agency. Bwana Rugut, karibu to the Situation Room.
Asante sana.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation. That is the hot seat. When we see somebody who's been Bwana PC coming here, we tell him, Bas, umejileta. Bas.
I hope you have a fire extinguisher around.
we definitely know how to put out fires.
Thank you.
We don't get angry because we'll not cook yams. But it's all
I had it today.
it's all conversations about the country.
Thank you.
So, before we went on air, you just told us that you have now retired. Now you are a farmer. After
Yes.
working in public service for how many years?
About 36 years. I joined public service in May 1986. In the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. I worked in the then VOK, partly in the newsroom, and also as a television producer. For about 2.5 years, about 3 years. I joined Moi University late 1988 as a tutorial fellow, assistant lecturer for about 2 years. And then now joined the mainstream public service again in 1990 as a district officer and rose up through the ranks to the level of provincial commissioner, as mentioned.
So from DO, you become DC.
Became
then
a
you
DC in a number of districts. And then I was appointed as a provincial commissioner in February 2006 and served in Central Province for slightly over 7 years.
Until now, you left the provincial
Until I
administration.
left provincial administration 2013 in the month of March.
There's a very interesting bit that you've said here. You worked in the newsroom.
I worked in the newsroom.
You're in good company.
So
This feels like home again.
What you're looking at this, you're feeling, My
I wish I
earlier
had
days.
continued here for that other time.
Yeah.
But then again, the challenges out there and the change from this to that also provided new challenges. And I think good decisions were made and I rose up through the ranks in that manner.
In how many parts of the country did you serve, from DO to DC?
Not less than 18, about 12 as a district officer, about 6 as a district commissioner, and one province as a PC.
So you served the length and breadth of Kenya.
Yeah, almost across the country.
Someone comes to you and tells you, I am from such and such a place. I say,
I was just
unajua
there.
mzee nani?
I might
there.
mention the village and the village elder there, and
chief.
the people in the church there, and a few other things. The details of interacting with the public in the whole country.
Serving in the years of former President Daniel Arap Moi, and then serving in the years of former President Moi Kibaki as provincial administration, there are those who have come here and told us, for example, in the years of Moi, in the morning, Moi would first of all want to have a brief of the country from his PCs. 8 PCs must report, Rift Valley iko aje Haji, Western iko aje,
True.
Nyanza iko vipi. Was it the same for Moi Kibaki?
Totally different. I didn't serve as a PC during the late President Moi's time. I was a district commissioner under him. But surprisingly, although you've mentioned that he used to call the provincial commissioners, you wouldn't be surprised to get a call from Mzee anytime, even as a DC. And he did call me many times when I was a DC in Nyamira, when I was a DC in Beira, 2000, 2002. The total opposite of the late now President Kibaki, who would allow you to work, give him a brief if it was necessary, call him if it was necessary, but the calls were far in between. He entrusted most of the operational issues to his ministers, for example, and the permanent secretary. So we would have maybe daily conversations with the minister in charge of internal security at that time, the late John Michuki. And we would trust then that that information would be transmitted
Right.
to the president, to His Excellency the President. Later also, the late Professor George Saitoti, we would have conversations quite often. And the permanent secretaries, Mr. Kitwai, Mr. Kimemia, Mr. Mutei Ringo. So the channel of communication was slightly different during President Kibaki's time. But nonetheless, we still felt that we were connected. Because if you are not asked a question about what has gone wrong, then you know you are doing the right thing.
How did it feel? How did it feel in order to expend duty and knowing that, yes, somebody had given you the position and then given you the leeway to be able to do your job? Did it feel easier to work, or did you feel that you needed the constant reminder about what the country needed?
The good thing is that the confidence alone was an inspiration in itself. Knowing that you had been appointed to a position, the appointing authority has full confidence in your ability, in your capacity, and does not micromanage the things that you do on a daily basis, so long as things are going on right. And that was inspiration enough. We would go out of our way to get the details of what we needed to have done. We knew what the expectations of the appointing authority and the expectations of the nation at large. And this caused very constant consultations between us, our peers elsewhere, and also our seniors in Harambee House. Really very gratifying when you know that you've been entrusted with a position as challenging as that of managing a whole province, but again being given the leeway to make certain decisions on your own, and when necessary then be able to brief the seniors in both Harambee House, and if need be, and I've said very rarely, the appointing His Excellency the President. However, let me mention this, that in my situation in Central Province, there was a bit of a difference. Remember, Othaya, the constituency of His Excellency, is within Central Province. And there were certain details which he expected, mostly from the ground. And since he was busy with national duties all the time, he would be all over the place in other areas of the country, performing his other national duties. Then it became sometimes my responsibility to follow up on certain details and where necessary, be able now to brief him. He would come for a constituency visit, for example. We would go together. And we all know Mzee, he doesn't give you details about, he would ask you a question, sometimes a bit vaguely. Hiyo kitu tuliona siku ile. Hiyo inaenda namna gani siku hizi? And you have to think very quickly.
Kitu gani,
Hiyo
siku
kitu
gani?
uliona siku ile ingekuwa ni kitu gani? You know, then very quickly find out all the information you require about that particular subject. Which means also all the time I had to get full briefs from the technical officers. It could be a health center. It could be a security installation, a police post. It could be maybe a school, some facility within a certain area, which he had a particular interest. And you know, within a short period of time, you would get to know Mzee has a particular interest in that detail. Is it a road connecting? And you quickly would get the detailed briefs from the technical officers. You know, we developed some rapport, very good rapport, to the extent that I would almost anticipate what would the next question be. And we would reach a place and he stops and he says, nataka tupitie ile pahali ingine, ile pahali tulienda siku ile. Quickly you have to rearrange the convoy and head to where you know that he had mentioned in an earlier conversation, in an earlier visit, in an earlier brief that he needed to see. And we did that. Within a short time, we were able now to be able to coordinate things, particularly now for the constituency.
So you also became like the Othaya MP, sort of.
By extension, helped by a lot by other people on the ground. Othaya had a special team of people. We used to call them the ODA, Othaya Development Association, and with very good, leadership there, whom he had entrusted fully with issues of development in the constituency. We had the late Mwito Kabuya in that association. We had David Washira, the former CEO of Consolidated Bank, also chairing that. And then later, the current Member of Parliament for Othaya, Honorable Mugambi. And we would link up with them on a daily basis, just to discuss issues which were dear to the heart of His Excellency the President. And where I would be able to push from my position as a provincial commissioner, pushing the technical officers, the road engineer, the provincial medical officer of health, and whoever was involved, whoever was responsible, then we would be able now to coordinate. I formed the linkage with the technical officers on the ground and the leadership of the Othaya Development Association. And where now necessary, then we'd be now able to give a joint brief to His Excellency, particularly prior to his visit to the constituency, or when it needed to be done, so that he would be abreast with whatever was happening on the ground. So this was the other challenge for us in Central Province, that you are not only doing the normal duties, but you also have to extend a hand to also perform other specific duties representing His Excellency the President on that.
He was also known as a reformist, and we saw a lot of the reform agenda during his presidency. And it didn't matter across sector, whether it was infrastructure, etc. The administration, did you feel, and how did you see some of the changes that came about because of his reform agenda? How uncomfortable was it?
I would say very comfortable. This is a very special person. His Excellency was, I can just use that word, special, in as much as he would provide leadership without seeming to push you. You would just know he wants this to change. He has seen this, and he has said, no, we need to alter this. And he would have his own way of communicating. And most of the time, he would, at the end of maybe a conversation, or at the end of that constituent visit, he would sometimes tell me, wewe sasa ndio yule mtu yuko hapa. Sasa nataka tufanye hii mambo kidogo tubadilishe. Just a simple statement. And you'd be able to capture that, Mzee wants us to change. And reforms came in that manner, in a very comfortable way. We were able to change things. We were able to, sometimes he would be informed about an insecurity problem in a certain area. And he would not give direction that you must do this. He would say, muende muangalie kitu. And it becomes my responsibility now as the chairman of the Security Committee, the PPO is on the ground, and the other officers below us.
Did you then adopt the feeling that things actually needed to change? Or was it being done just because the president had said so? Or then did it become then a manner of thinking to say, actually, this is right, and then become something that you own thereafter?
Remember the years between, particularly around 2014, 15, 16, 17. These are what we call the years of reform in government. A lot of things changed. Even the way things were being done by provincial administration. This is when we started training chiefs. This is when we started training the district officers to look at things differently. Leave the issues of harassment of the public. Develop, gear your efforts more towards development. Community issues. How do you address them? So it's not only that the president has said it, but we are looking at the bigger picture that the government that the president we are talking about was leading was focused on reforms, focused on reforms in the public sector. How do we manage institutions? So these were things which were going on at the same time. But he would give you a hint occasionally about a specific issue. And we would go around, and we normally chose to cut across. A constituency visit, for example, would not end in one specific sector. We would go to the dairy industry, we would go to the cooperative societies, the coffee factories and so on, the tea factories, cross certain roads and stop and discuss the roads. So you get the idea of what he wants, what he feels is the right thing to be done. And you are looking at the background of we need to change in terms of how development is brought to the people, how public institutions are managed. And you get that some indirectly, some with a hint only. But also remember, these were the times when we did a lot of training on how do we anchor, the leadership of, the public administration towards the reform agenda in government.
Yeah.
How do we, synchronize the desires of the leadership of the nation at the top with what is happening here on the ground. And it worked very well. Sometimes without any push, but as I've said, with a hint here and there. But understanding the man, the leadership, understanding His Excellency was very key to this, so that you needed to really understand what direction does he want us to take and fit into it seamlessly.
For very many years, the provincial administration in this country had has had an image, and that's an image of ukiona chief hepa DO anakuja, just know it's the time to close shops because the DOA is coming and we must attend the DO's baraza or the DC's baraza, and it's by force, by fire. And now you're talking about the reforms. Those reforms, how are they being received by the people? From where you sat, and as you are coming in and you are a PC in a new era, having served as a DO and a DC in a different era, how are people relating with the provincial administration?
Things changed a lot. I want to say that between 2003 and the first years of the Kibaki presidency, the 5 years, things changed a lot. We even started having service charters in our offices that if you come to this office, this is your expectation. You are supposed to be served within this period of time. If it is this particular service, others would delay, others you can be given instantly. That is one. The issue of corruption, which we all know during that time really went down because there were no longer any arambis. There were no receipt books on the desks of the local administrators expecting you to give some token, whatever contribution before you are served in what really was your right. You go to that office and whatever you're going to be given there, the service you're going to be given there is your right. And so in the course of time, it started trickling down very well, and people appreciated. That one I need to say that the appreciation was it was there. You could feel it. People were saying that now you go to a government office, you're not meant to wait. The servant leadership, which we could see His Excellency himself practicing, down to earth, able to communicate things without giving instructions, without being able to push anybody, coercion. So it trickled down, and with all the trainings that we undertook at that time for senior staff and also for the other staff, the district officers, the chiefs, the assistant chiefs, you could now feel that there was change. Government officers became more friendly. The RRI, rapid response initiatives to change certain things, even clean up the offices, so that the clutter which was common at the district headquarters, division headquarters, all the vehicles, junk all over the place, unrepaired furniture, scattered on the corridors. Things started changing, and you could appreciate that now. Here is government which is closer to the people. Here is a government which is able to communicate its services directly, and also get responses from the citizenry. That was the feeling that came, and you could feel it, you could appreciate it in every level.
I want us to take a break at this point. 29 minutes after 8. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. We are live on KTN Home, on SpiceFM, on YouTube, and on Facebook. It's Eric Latif and Ndu Oko hosting Japhter Kiplimo Rugut, who was a provincial commissioner from 2006 to 2013, serving in Central Province under President Mwai Kibaki. Before that, he had been a DC, a DO, and since then he has also served in public service until retirement last month. He's here with us talking to us about the president that he knew. How did Mwai Kibaki ensure security was implemented in the country, and also development? Remember, provincial commissioners are not just security officers. They're also development officers. They are everything. In very many instances across the country, security officers, provincial administration is also judiciary. It's 8:30. Let's take that break. We'll continue the conversation shortly.
This is The Situation Room.
During your time, Bwana Rugut, we had incidences of security or insecurity and action by government that took place in your area of jurisdiction. And this is in Central. There was issues and incidences of Mungiki. And then there was a crackdown on Mungiki that led even to a UN special rapporteur coming to look at extrajudicial killings in the country. What happened?
This is one of those situations that up to today we still want to understand what led to this. There could be many other, many theories about what led to the Mungiki situation. In the 2006, 2007, up to 2008, we had a lot of incidences. Muranga, for example, at some point became a no-go zone. Areas of Githunguri, areas of Kiambu, around Banana, Mujatha, those areas. It came to the point where even businesses were closed. People who had constructed their houses, good houses, very comfortable homes, moved away from those homes. They were not able to live there because of the harassment. Of course, it took an economic dimension where sometimes it was a situation of you have, I don't have, and they come to you if you have certain properties. If you are earning certain funds through a legit business, Matatu for example, they demand protection fee that give us so that you can operate. So that to the extent that even registering in certain routes, Route 106 for example, 107, going up Kiambu towards Githunguri, you had to contribute a certain amount to the people, like toll stations on the way. And this, of course, was really detrimental to the growth of business and even the growth of the economy at the local level. Again, it took other dimensions. Kirinyaka, it went beyond that, 2008-09, where they even started demanding payment of certain fee for production, farm produce. Those people who were transporting tomatoes and other farm produce to Nairobi. You've harvested, you've woken up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6. You're on the roadside at 6:37, delivering your goods to whoever is transporting it to Nairobi. And there is somebody there asking for his cut. Somebody who didn't wake up to
And
go
this
to the
is
farm.
even before you sell.
You've not even sold it. Or whatever now you're going to earn, then now you share with him. Even milk business. They even come to spots in certain houses and say, the production in that from that cow is 7 liters, so 2 liters is ours. 5 is yours. It went to that level, and it was to us it was an
And it
issue
took
of great
place.
concern.
This was very fast. I mean, within a very short span of time, it had spanned the entire province.
True. Mainly, as I've mentioned, Kiambu, a lot of it in Muranga, part of it in Thika, Kiandutu area. Kirinyaga, it went there between Karatina in Nyeri and Kerugoya, Kutus. So this was an issue of great concern to us. A lot of it also in Mukurweini. Now the crackdown, we got a lot of support from the then minister, Honorable John Michuki. And the crackdown was really meant to secure the area so that normal livelihood would come back as expected. Because if you are a farmer producing milk and you have to share that produce with somebody else who has not fed that cow, who has not done anything, if you are producing, minji in your farm, you've irrigated it and you've worked overnight in those conditions, rice fields and so on, and somebody is there asking for his share, then these were serious issues, and the crackdown was really justified.
Sure.
Was it justified to the extent that it went? I mean, we had very many instances of people reporting that their loved ones have disappeared, turning up dead, or their loved ones have directly and expressly been shot dead by the police.
I think those are subjects of investigations and maybe conversations at another level. But what we are saying is that government had to secure its citizenry. And to that extent, for us, it was more in terms of where do you open a new police post? What patrols are you going to instigate or to institute to ensure that people are able to stay in their own homes at night? So that the shopping centers which had closed could be reopened. And we did that. And we were able to reopen shopping centers across most of Muranga, for example, most of Kiambu, Muchadha, Banana area, Kithunguri, areas which had businesses closed. They had become ghost small townships in the rural area. And so for us, our concern really was to bring normalcy.
And the approach worked?
The approach worked.
Okay.
It did work. Because by 2008, 2009, we had stabilized the situation in Central Province.
Why do you think then that the same could not have been replicated across other places? And I ask that question because the insecurity issues we see today in one presidency were also alive during the Kibaki presidency, whether we're looking at areas of Laikipia, whether we're looking at areas of Baringo and places like this. They're still very much alive today, but they were also, alive then.
Yeah.
If we're looking at a reformist agenda, which was the president's, one of his things that happened at that time, security forces definitely felt those as well. So why do you think that what was done in Central to curb this insecurity issue, to bring these vigilante groups under control, has not happened in those areas as well?
Sometimes it is a combination of factors, including also even the personalities involved. Sometimes if the team is able to work together and work well, those issues will be eliminated. Well, let me take it at a personal level. I worked in Marakwet, LK Marakwet then as a district commissioner, 2003, 2005. Incidentally, that is why I met His Excellency the President for the first time. He came to visit Marakwet, and we visited Tot. Tot is in the Kerio Valley. It had been the scene of a lot of insecurity previous to 2002. And then NAC took over in 2003. I was posted immediately after that in January, end of January 2003. When people had actually moved from the Kerio Valley and gone up the hills, they were living in, even some in caves, up the escarpment because of the insecurity, emanating from across Kerio Valley, the other side, Kolowa area. But we were able to stabilize that within a year. And by the time when the president visited Marakwet in 2004, and maybe that is where he could have spotted me for the first time. Because the reports which were given was that now people have been able to move back from the escarpment where they had been forced to live for many years. Schools had closed. We were able to reopen over 20 primary schools along the valley, which had been closed during that period. And now that is a combination of many things, including, dedication, including building the right teams on the ground, and being able to interpret what could be the cause of the problem. And also using the local community to provide intelligence, provide security updates, and be able to intercept problems before they occurred. So this can happen. And sometimes now, if the right focus is not placed in a security situation, then you'll find that it escalates. Instead of diminishing, it can go up. It can be done. And I believe that this could be part of the lessons that can be replicated in other places. If we managed it in Kerio Valley in 2003, 04, 05, to the point that farm production in Kerio Valley in Todd area went up. People were able to now sell mangoes. People were able to harvest, the short-term crops, millet and sorghum. Within a very short time, they were actually exporting the food out of Kerio Valley. In 2 years' time, we had reopened schools.
As a
This
district
can be
commissioner, you chair the district security committee.
Yes.
So you also are privy to a lot of intelligence that's coming from the various agencies.
Yes.
What are the causes of insecurity, for example, in Kerio Valley? What is it that causes this to keep flaring up?
Competition over resources, pasture, for example, and then cattle rustling. Of course, cattle rustling is endemic in that region. As you go north from Marakwet, Pokot, going up towards Turkana, it's always part of the cultural setup of the people in that place. But then again, focus should be placed on other development issues so that there are alternatives. I've mentioned that in 2 years' time we were able to resettle Kerio Valley, and people were able to produce. Lorries started going down Kerio Valley through Paruesa, towards Tot, to bring back mangoes. And in other areas, potatoes and other produce, which as a result of that, now people started refocusing from the livestock, which they had taken as a mainstay of the economy. They started seeing alternatives. This can be done, and part of the issue, to answer your question, part of the causes of insecurity could be, economic. If people are not refocused on the right economic channels where they can produce their livelihoods, sometimes they get, misguided and feel that now let's get it from the person who has produced
By force.
and get it by force. And the leadership can help us in that. We had very good leaders. I can mention the then Minister Kiplimo. We would go down to the village level with her and talk to the people, talk to the elders, convince them to take their children to school, open up opportunities for economic, solutions to the problems that they had, alternate to, going across the valley to go and steal livestock from the next community. And it worked. And this can still be done elsewhere.
There are those that have also talked about the lack of development or slow development in some areas, non-existent development in some parts of Baringo, of Elgeyo Marakwet, or even for West Pokot. An area you find an entire ward does not have a health facility, does not have a school, does not. Why would we have such? And yet we had DCs and DOs everywhere in this country chairing development committees.
The situation was slightly different at that time. I would want to say that, when we had funding coming from the national level, going down to sometimes it would miss the target. I want to say that maybe sometimes things were not channeled the right way. But that would not be the excuse now. Now that we have CDF, we have, that is a kit which can be utilized by the member of parliament of the area. We have the devolved funds through the county. And now focus can be, directed properly and well, and to reach the target very well. So in fact, in the last maybe 10 years or so, I would expect that some of the things now that we are talking about would have been put behind us. Because now we have better focus, we have better resourcing from government through the CTF and through the county, various county kitties which are available for the development of these facilities, schools, and so on. It's true, I visited areas of that, what we would refer then to as North Baringo at that time, and you'd find a whole location without a secondary school. I mean, so you can imagine now, where do this, the transition, where would they transit to? Primary school, and then that is the end of it.
Yeah.
The same people would now remain in the village. What do they do? Then the temptation would be that they occupy themselves in some of the activities which we are talking about, very negative activities which to them is fine. You are a man, so you can do it, but which we know are detrimental to the overall development of that area. Build more schools, encourage the transition between primary school and secondary school, build other tertiary institutions, polytechnics, get these people occupied, have them employed, self-employed if they are not able to be employed gainfully elsewhere, but they can have their own activities which they can get involved in. This will gradually, and it's not even in the long term, it could be in the medium term, short and medium term. 3 to 5 years, you are able to transform an area.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you see, as in, if you look at what is currently happening, I mean, of course, just giving reference back to former late President Mwai Kibaki now, and saying that, these are things that happened under his administration. Would you say that there was a good handle on things because of, the ideas that he put out there and said, look, this is the direction that we ought to take. This is what we should do around the country. Do you think that things developed properly under his watch, and moving forward, would it have been different had he not given the kind of direction that he did?
I will go back to what I said earlier. Mzee Kibaki was a special person. He looked at the bigger picture, but he never lost details on the small issues. And many times, as I said, in a casual conversation between you and the president, between us and the president, you would get to know that he wants certain things to be done. He was able to provide direction in a very subtle manner. And I believe that is why those successes were there. It was easy. It was easy to gauge the direction you want to go, because now you know that even if you do it yourself, having picked it up from him, you would have his blessings.
Sure.
He might not even come back to ask you about it again. I am saying this because, with all confidence, because I know I used to generate briefs for him. Generate a brief for His Excellency, and he will go through it page by page, detail by detail. And he had a very close grasp of figures. He would know the transition rate in an area for primary, secondary school. He would know the number of, in the staffing levels in schools, the shortage of, the number of teachers. How many health workers do we have in our so many, health facilities? And why do we have that shortage? Give him a brief today. He comes 6 months later. He will not have forgotten what you briefed him 6 months before. He will remember, and he will ask you, now, Ile, what have we done about it? So you see, when you have somebody who has that patience, that capacity to understand the details of what needs to be done, and he is able to revisit and ask you if you have made a change, a difference from the last time when he was there, I mean, then things will work. And I can say that, for sure, things changed because of the grasp he had. And we might be talking about Othaya, which was his constituency. But remember, he would not finish and end at Odaya. When we are through with that conversation, then he would now turn to me because I represented the province, the other counties, all the way up to Nyandarua. Then he would ask me, na huku kwingine, what is happening there? Wako na mambo kama hii tunafanya hapa. You see, now he's already asking me to go and get details about those other places, which I would provide at an appropriate time. Which means for him, it was the small, and then you build it to the bigger one. The bigger picture would always, not be lost to him. He would ask me about na huku kwingine Kiambu huko, ile mambo tulikuwa tunasikia huko, imekuwa namna gani? Because you see, we finished the conversation with the leadership at the local level, but he still knows that I can move that agenda forward at another level, and he has now removed himself from the local constituency,
MP.
the MP for Odaya. And he wants me to look at the bigger picture, all the other constituencies in Central Province at that time. And it became our own challenge. I would ask then the district commissioner of that particular area to look at the security situation there, the problems in the schools in that area, the health facilities and so on. So that fidelity to, detail is what I think changed things during the Kibaki presidency.
It's also said that under his watch, a lot of the infrastructure was built so that, or the foundations were built so that you could come then later and fill in. Do you see that also in the sector with the provincial administration? Do you see that having happened? That today, because of what happened at that time, then now you can, fill in and just keep going and keep filling in because of that structural...
True. I think President Kibaki is one leader who realized, I think he identified the vehicle to move the country forward. Infrastructure development was one of them. And he was always very keen on what could be done to develop infrastructure in terms of even buildings, in terms of, the economic recovery strategy. Part of it was what do we do in schools, laboratories, and a lot of laboratories. And we were made even to be like the clerks of works at some point to inspect and ensure that these were developed. 2008, 2009, 2010, many things were done in the local areas of jurisdiction, which we knew had the blessings of his success, because he could see this is the only way that you can develop. This is the only way that you can move the country forward. And the foundations were put there. Many administrative units were created around the same period. District headquarters were built. Security posts were opened. Locally, I've said, there we opened about 6 or 7 police posts, and others were upgraded to full police stations. Katuruturu, we had Kariko, we had Kiathenge, we had Witima. He could see that if you open this post, then the area would be secured. And then people will be able to do their business as well. So all those things were done, and they were part of a larger growth requirement for the country.
Right.
Infrastructure was, to him, I think, key. All the way from roads, all the way from facilities in schools. And he would take details. He would sometimes just go to a school and want to visit a laboratory, nothing else.
Yes.
The rest of the things he doesn't want during that particular period. Or he goes and he wants to see the library. How have you stocked this library? How have you developed it? Reading space, is there enough? So you could see, that those details, those are the details I'm saying, that which the fidelity which he had to detail is what really motivated a lot of things to happen the right way.
And finally, as we conclude, 2008, post-election violence. As the Provincial Commissioner for Central, there was not a widespread violence in Central. But at Provincial Commissioner level, you and your colleagues, PCs, Nairobi, Nyanza, Rift Valley, and the others, tell us about that period and what the President was telling you to do.
Yes, a very trying period, a very trying moment, in the history of this country. Very painful pictures which we saw. And true, Central Province almost became like, isolated from what was happening elsewhere. But we were hit very hard by a humanitarian crisis. We received thousands and thousands of people displaced from elsewhere. And we were opening up internally displaced centers across, the province. We had them here in Kiplimo in Kiambu, Kiambu West. We had them in Olkalau. We had them in Olchororok. Those very many. And when you are receiving 5,000 people in one day, or in a span of 36 hours.
It's strenuous.
Without food, without shelter, nothing. And we had to work overnight with the then Ministry of Special Programs to ensure that, they got food, they got, facilities, drugs.
But what was the president telling you? What were the orders from the president?
Incidentally, I would not say that they were orders, but he would ask us ensure that we have those people settled down. The communication was very subtle, and sometimes it would come not even directly from him, but we would get, maybe a concern raised by the minister at that time in charge of provincial administration, or the principal, the permanent secretary, and occasionally from the head of public service that what is the situation in Kiplimo, for example. How many people did we receive over the last 3 days? Have they received enough supplies of blankets, food? And we would now go out of our way to ensure that we have mobilized
all
the
that is
resources.
done.
Red Cross would come in. So in most cases, it was the issue of coordinating to ensure that those supplies reached the people who desired to, who deserve to get them. So the direction was provided that we have a crisis. The government was grateful that we didn't lose many lives. I think about only 5 across the province over that period. 4 in Kiambu and 1 in Nyandarua. But the crisis, the direction was provide supplies, and we did that. Of course, the other step came much later, the issue of resettling them, but that was handled from the headquarters. Ours was now to identify who goes first. If land has been bought in Laikipia, who moves first? If land has been bought in Nakuru, which was done, who moves next?
Who gets there?
And so we were coordinating from the supply end so that we channel the number of people who have been identified to go where the facilities have been provided.
Rugut, I want to thank you very much for joining us today and for sharing with us your stories, your experiences with the former president, Mwai Kibaki. I'm sorry, I keep calling you Jasper. I read the name. Japhter Kiplimo Rugut was the PC in Central Province under Mwai Kibaki between 2006 and 2013. He's been here with us. Asante sana.
Thank you very much.